And hello, with the big news for this week, of course, on Monday was the OpenAI DevDay. Here we see Sam Altman, and I thought it would be interesting to summarize the key points from that presentation. So that's what we'll do this week for AI Week in Review. Now, the first thing that Sam did was review some of the milestones that have led us to where we are today. And you can see here on screen, 2 million developers are using the OpenAI software. 92% of Fortune 500 companies are using it already, and 100 million weekly active users. But after about 10 or 11 minutes, Sam went on to say, well, let's take a look at the new stuff. And as you can see at the bottom of the screen, that caused the audience to applaud. So there were 6 different parts of or key announcements that occurred during this session, and you can see them summarized here. So let's take a look at those. The first one, and probably the biggest one, was 4 Turbo. So the GPT-4 Turbo, in turn, has got a number of new features, and the first one that you can see here is up to 128,000 tokens of context. Now, for context, the previous standard was something like 8,000 to 30,000, maybe 32,000 tokens. And what is a token? Well, a token could be a number of different things, but in general and typically it's going to be a subword. It could even be something like a question mark. In some cases it can be a space. And so if you want to think about, say, how many tokens might there be per 100 words, we could say, well, again, that could vary, but maybe 120 to 150 tokens would exist per 100 words. And if you want to say, well, let's set a standard here, how many tokens might a typical chatbot consume? You see that history window there. Well, such a thing as a chatbot in a customer service context might consume, a couple dozen to a couple hundred tokens. So you can see that 128,000 tokens is a lot, and Sam is helping us to visualize what that is here by saying that that equates to about 300 pages of a standard book, 16 times more than the 8K context from before. So that's subset number 1 under Turbo. Number 2 is JSON mode. JavaScript object notation is a lightweight data interchange format from server to web applications. It's language agnostic. And he's saying, okay, you can simply turn JSON mode on. And why would you do that? Basically, it gives us as developers more control. We can call APIs easier. We can call functions, which are blocks of code that are designed to do a designated task. We can call many functions all at once, and we can expect that the application will follow our instructions better. Our outputs will be more reproducible. And he's talking here about the fact that we could pass a seed parameter and it'll make the model return a consistent output. Seed, is like when we're using, say, Python or an application like that to generate random numbers. They're not really random numbers. If I put in a seed of 42, it'll be exactly the same random numbers in exactly the same order every single time, which can be important if we want consistent outputs. And you can see visualized here on screen, again, a visual representation of that same concept of creating a consistent output. So that's number 2. Number 3, enriching the capabilities using outside documents and databases. So bringing knowledge, of course, this is in an enterprise context, bringing our proprietary documents and knowledge into the application and allowing it to train on that. In the context of enriching, he also happened to mention the update from, we know that GPT had been frozen in time in September of 2021, and he announced that it's now been updated to April of 2023. So that's excellent. Number 4 is things relating to vision and voice. So DALL-E 3 had much to say about DALL-E 3 and TTS, or text-to-speech API. So now Turbo can accept images via an API, and it can do things like generate captions for those images, classify those images, analyze those images. And he gave an example here from Coca-Cola, which was launching that day, Monday, a new campaign to let its customers create Diwali cards using DALL-E 3. That's beautiful, huh? So the next thing was he talked also about 6 preset voices. There was a demo. I must say the demo was very good. It was a very interesting demo, very realistic, maybe the most realistic human voice I've ever heard. And of course, on the other side of that is speech recognition. So he announced Whisper v3 today, and an API that's coming out soon. So that was number 4. Number 5 was the ability to do fine tuning, which is, of course, for adapting a generic model to a specific use case to perform better. And so in an extreme end of the spectrum, to learn a completely new knowledge domain, that is now possible. Very interesting. And he also mentioned custom models. So custom models will be launched with select companies. He mentioned that it is going to be, for now, expensive to do, but that's something that will be kicking off shortly. And then underneath Turbo, number 6 was higher rate limits, specifically double the rates before, 2 times the tokens per minute. So that was GPT-4 Turbo. Now, that was point number 1. Point number 2 is Copyright Shield. Basically what he's saying is that OpenAI is agreeing that they will defend any enterprise user or API user against any copyright claims that may surface as a result of using their product. Number 3 was a price drop, and the price drop is fairly significant. But what is very interesting about it is that it is a price drop together with an increase in capability. So we're comparing here the price before for 4K with the price now for 16K, and with all of those reductions that you see on screen, Sam is saying that on a blended basis, the total reduction is about 2.75 times cheaper than before, again, for a much more capable product. Number 4 is that ChatGPT is now using GPT-4 Turbo underneath the hood. So he made this announcement. What that means is the new date cutoff is underneath the hood for ChatGPT. It means that ChatGPT can now access the web, it can write and run code, and so forth. So I thought I would test that out and see. I wrote a prompt into ChatGPT, were any significant records broken in April of 2023? Because that's what he indicated it has been updated to. And as you can see, if we can zoom in here, it says, I'm sorry I don't have any real-time information. My training is only until January of 2022. So I'm not sure whether they're in the process of updating that or whether there's something else that I need to know better. But as you can see, January 22 is neither September 2021, nor is it all the way to April of 2023. It's somewhere in between. So again, maybe they're in the process of updating that. But that's what I found today when I tested it out. Number 5 is agents, which he also refers to, Sam refers to as GPTs. And that's pretty interesting. So he's talking about the ability to create custom GPTs, either personal or to be made available publicly, and being able to do that using natural language. That's interesting. So he gave an example. He created live something called a startup mentor, which is giving advice to people who want to create a startup. And he did all of that using natural language on the fly from a laptop while we watched. And this capability is also possible in APIs. So he talked about some of these logos that we see here on screen, the fact that they've created capabilities with GPT underneath the hood, and the fact that doing so required dozens of engineers and months of effort, but now should be quite streamlined given the ability to simply use natural language to get these things done. And he also talked about soon to open a store where you and I can post our new GPTs and see if people want to use them. So that was number 5. Number 6 was an assistance API, which was quite interesting as well. Again, natural language. So should make it much easier. And what this allows for is things like persistent threads, long history, built-in retrieval, and above all, the ability to use natural language in order to create the application. So there was a demo for that. This person started from a blank sheet of paper, basically, and within less than a minute, he'd created the shell of an application. Next thing he did is add a simple assistant to the application. Then he showed, as the things were beginning to happen, that you could see that it was interpreting those instructions and writing code behind the scenes for that. You could see also that it was beginning to drop pins on the map based upon the text prompts. And all of this was happening in a matter of seconds, or less than a minute or two. He dropped a PDF into the application and read through the PDF and summarized it in a visually attractive manner. And then the part of the demo, which was particularly interesting, was writing a question that actually requires more than simply pulling information from some kind of external database. So you can see this question: will be 4 friends staying at this Airbnb. What's my share of it, plus my flights? And so we could see that the application understood that it was going to have to write some code in order to do that, and began doing the calculations. And the point that was being made here was, although this is a fairly simple calculation in a sense, it could also be applied to more complex complications, even in a financial services context. So that's very interesting, because all of that was done in minutes using natural language. So to summarize, we had these key announcements of GPT-4 Turbo and all of those others that you see on screen. And underneath Turbo, we saw these capabilities defined. Now, if we were to go back and think about that very first slide, where we see that there are 2 million developers using the application today, you can imagine the impact that this will have, enabling 2 million people to create applications in minutes using natural language. So I thought that would be worth sharing with you. Let's see how this all develops. Thank you very much for joining, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.